Okay, so hello. Today we are talking to Jessica Roy, who has very recently left a permanent teaching position. Thank you for joining us today, Jessica. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you.
Great, good. Okay, so let's start by your original motivation. How long did you want to be a teacher right from a small child or through your teen years? Did it go on you gradually, or did it just hit you when you were looking at university, or how did you make that decision?
I think I always knew that I enjoyed working with people, but particularly young people, quite from an earlier age. And I certain things that I did, I sort of felt I did well with, and therefore it might be a bit of a gift that I might have, and I could follow that up. Certainly, by the time I got to my university degree, I just started absolutely loving it. And so I became a teacher in the long time ago of 1999.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. And primary or secondary?
So it was primary. I actually trained in early years and Key Stage 1, but I've never actually taught properly in early years on Key Stage 1. I think I did a term recently, and that is the first time. So interestingly, I trained in that bit, but never really,
Right,
did
yeah,
that bit.
okay.
Mm.
And so how long did you actually teach for in the end? In permanent positions?
Oh, that's a good question. So exactly, I'm not sure. A bit of maternity leave in the middle, etc. But I think it was slightly over 22 years. Yeah, I've
Right,
taught, and I left. Well, officially this Christmas just gone.
right, yeah, okay. And how many different schools did you move schools quite often, stay in any for long periods, or?
Um, Probably from a range of about my longest school was 8 years. Loved it, loved it, loved it. And they sort of range from about 2 to 5 years. And I did more recently in the last kind of 3 years or so, I did a few stints of supply and kind of longer term contracts of a term and things like that.
Right, yeah. And so your moves between schools, were they for promotions?
Yeah, so one was I started off in Lancashire. I moved over to Yorkshire, sort of thinking about starting a family, to be nearer home, which is where I'm from. I then stayed, that was the school I stayed at for my long period, my 8 years. And in that school, I became like a subject coordinator, I was music coordinator, I started doing other little bits and pieces. And I had my children whilst I was there. And then sort of came back around. I'd done 8 years. I'd done sort of all the year groups, and sort of a couple of people who were really good friends had moved on. And it was that point where I was like, oh, I'm back in year 3 where I'd started, and I fancied a new challenge. So I just sort of looked around. So moved on at that point, to which I became an English lead for the first time. And it was a smaller school, so you actually then become lead of most things. But I was also senior teacher there. And whilst I was there, I kind of stood in for the head and sort of grew my confidence quite a lot. And that was a gorgeous school as well. And then from there, somebody kind of approached me and asked me about going to quite a tough school back in a city where I had been, because they know I really enjoyed working with inner city children. And also it was an English role again. So I was sort of asked to come and have a look, and I did really enjoy it, and it did mean a promotion, etc. So I moved on from there. That one was a difficult ending, so I did a little bit of supply after that, and then from there I took a post as a head teacher. And that was really my final main post that I did before doing a couple of kind of terms of supply before I came out.
So that all
Mm.
sounds really positive. So at what point did you think, actually, no, I don't want to do this anymore?
Um, the school that I had gone to back to the inner city was difficult in lots and lots of different ways. The kids were amazing. It was a difficult inner city school. People who work in inner city schools will know what I mean. And so there were lots of different pressures. But ultimately, it wasn't a great environment either. And as I say, I had a bit of a difficult kind of coming out of there, and I saw some difficult things happening that kind of didn't sit with me very well with my values and my personal ethos. And so I came away from that and had a bit of thinking time, really, and that started my, I'm seeing something, this isn't the career that initially I had gone into, and obviously the pressures and everything that everybody experiences.
Yeah.
Actually, when you've been in it as long as I have, you've seen those grow over the years. The amount of workload, all the things you have to be to everybody, to the children, to the parents, to the staff, to the senior leadership, to everybody. There's a lot more pressure and workload. If you've got the right team around you, and if you've got people who can support you and help you with that, it makes it easier, and it does help. But if you haven't, it's quite difficult, and it's quite difficult to go back day after day. So that was probably the start. That kind of exit from there was the start, I think. And then I think I had I've always been really positive and upbeat, and I will always go back in, and I'm very much children are in the center. There's a point, however, when all the bits around that, and the way that the education system works at the moment does not allow for I was always a huge believer of happy staff equal happy children, and it's almost that you are penalised, or you're made to be seen as weak if you really want to benefit your staff and really build up your staff and really support your staff. I was in, I think, a few places where it was really the thing to, that word accountability to me was swung around and used in a negative way. And that's against my beliefs, my belief system. And so by the time I got to, and even as a head, I was in a bit of a difficult environment. I think I was a bit unlucky probably in my last few years, but it all spoke to me, because I'm very much, whatever experience you go through, you learn from. And it all spoke to me about the type of system that we're in at the moment. And it is not a system really that is set up for somebody like me and like many of us who sort of have that compassion, integrity, that sort of belief that we want to have a happy staff in order to have happy children, etc. And so I was starting to get a bit bitter about it, and I didn't like that part of myself, and that didn't sit with me. That wasn't like me as a person. So that's when I felt the need to exit, really.
Right, okay. So did you start thinking of ways out and looking for ways out while you were still teaching, or did you take the plunge without plan B?
Yeah, so what I knew was, when I finished my headship, so I didn't, I came away from my headship because again, it was in COVID, so I was ahead this time last year actually, and it was a really difficult time, and lots of different factors, but I knew I didn't want to do that particular headship. I hadn't closed the door to headship completely, actually. I just knew it was the wrong place and the wrong time. But when I came away from that, I did a term somewhere, which was nice. I did a term somewhere else. But actually, because I had come out of that constant drive forward for me into leadership and all those other things, I was able to sit back a little bit and look at schools, look at workplaces in schools with fresh eyes, and kind of see that however you look at it, it's because I always thought as well, sometimes you have to be in something to change it. And I was really like, maybe I should stay in it because I can change it that way. But actually, when I was able to sit back and look at it, I thought, this is bigger than me. And until the kind of the root of it changes from the government, etc., there's not a lot that I can do. So when I was in those kind of second posts, kind of eased back a little bit, and I was deliberately easing off, I thought, I do want to sit back and just look at this with a fresh eye and make my own decision actually about what I would like to do. I just started thinking, I started doing a coaching and mentoring qualification, because I just started thinking about, well, what were the bits that I liked? and so I looked and I found a level 5 coaching and mentoring qualification, because I thought, well, okay, even if I still stay in leadership and if I still want to stay in teaching, that's going to help me anyway. But if I don't, I might, I can still use it potentially for something else. And so I just started thinking a little bit more widely, and looking at other things. But even at that point, I was still probably held into teaching. And I think it's one of those that when I joined it, we talk about it being a vocation, and my thinking was that would be, and my family's thinking, and all those people around you, like my mum, bless her, I think she's been the one who's probably been most worried about me coming out of teaching. But all these people that it's a vocation for life, and you think, that is my career for life. So I think I was still in it, sort of thinking, this is still my career but let me just start looking at it and start thinking about it. And I think it was only when I was in a particular school, and this was a sort of my line in the sand. I was in a particular school, and again, I'd eased off, and this was my first contract actually as a year 1 teacher. And I thought, brilliant, I'll learn a new skill. I've not taught in Key Stage 1 for ages. Do phonics. I learned all the new phonics. Really enjoyed working with the little children. They were fantastic. And they approached me and they knew my CV, and they said, oh, there's a deputy position going, and we think you'd be really great. And so at that point I thought, oh, well, okay, I've not really considered being a deputy, but actually where I am, this school's really close to home. It's convenient. I could kind of sit back a little. It's like going back about 8 or 10 years in my career, but I can probably do this pretty much with my eyes shut. This is all right. I might go for this. And so I was sort of persuaded to go for it, and I did. And then it was for a trust again, and I've had another experience with a trust, and it wasn't wonderful. And the trust, on the day, somebody from the trust turned up as part of the interview, and obviously they got it over me, and they were in the trust and I wasn't in the trust. And that was just another experience for me that and I know this isn't for everybody, but it was my experience that does tend to happen at the moment, that trusts are growing their own. And if you're within the trust, it's really hard to kind of penetrate an academy trust and so on. But it also spoke to me about the unfairness again. And I thought I'd be really upset, but I wasn't. And that also spoke to me at that point, because I was like, that day was my line in the sand. I thought, why am I not really upset about this? And I just thought, actually, because this has probably cemented everything I've been thinking. And actually, do you know what? This is it. This is me moving on. And that happened in November. And that was the day that I knew that I was making plans to come out of teaching.
And you did at the end of that term? Yeah.
So that was a temporary thing for the end of that term. They did ask me actually to stay, because they did need some, and I said no. And I said, thank you very much, but no, I'm moving on. And I had everything. I've had great reviews, if you like, great. I always do my job really well, but I was like, no, I've had enough. Yeah.
How did it feel saying no?
Really empowering. And so for the first time, and this is what I've had experiences of recently and since that day, feeling like you're taking control of your future. And I felt for a few years like a lazy river in a swimming pool, like I'm just sort of been dragged down this path, and I don't really know, I'm not really making any decisions, but people are kind of doing it for me, and I'm sort of going along. And so by saying no, and it was a little bit scary, it was a little bit, and they're like, well, have you got something to go to? I'm like, no. But and so there's a bit of, oh, well, we think you're really brave, and you don't know if they mean it. I'm not sure if they do. Or stupid. But it felt really, really, it felt for the first time in a long time that I was taking control of my own future. and started telling people that as well. And actually, once I started telling people and my family, and they were sort of a bit surprised to start with, because that has been my life, and I've obviously done well in my career, and I have enjoyed many parts of it. So they're a bit like, oh, are you sure? And I thought, you know what, I can take that success from there, and I'm going to move it to the future, and I'm going to be happier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you spoke about the level 5 coaching. Had you already started that course while you were still teaching, or did you only start that afterwards?
So I started it last summer, and I did it last summer. What I did do once I made that decision in October, November time, is I also looked around at different coaching, because when I made the decision, I thought I would like some time away from education. It might be that sometime in the future, maybe I'll come back. I haven't closed that door completely. I say I'm quite open, I'm quite positive. It's not an always closed door. But at the moment, I don't really want to have anything to do with education in terms of that. So I started looking at types of coaching that I might want to do. And I was really fortunate that as a head and as a senior leader before that, I'd had some fantastic coaching. And I still see my coach, which is really fantastic. And I've seen the power of it and that it has. So I'd done that qualification, but I stumbled upon, first of all, divorce and relationship coaching. And again, it's one of these things that the things that happen in your life that are maybe negative things that you see, actually you can use to help you move forwards. Because I was divorced in 2017, and it wasn't the easiest time. But actually, I've now done an accreditation with a divorce and relationship coach, which means that that is now my company that I'm starting, is divorce and relationship coaching. Now, as it happens, because of where I've been, I've also got some friends who are head teachers and things like that. So there's a head teacher friend who, because the other thing I'd be doing is that, because that is my business that I have to grow, I need to kind of keep things ticking over. So I'm dipping in, doing 2, 3 at the most days of supply at the moment, just to kind of, whilst I get things started and to keep money ticking over. But I went into my friend's school, who was ahead the other day, and she was really struggling. And so I said to her about coaching, and she was really interested. So I'm actually offering to coach her for free, with the thought that if she thinks I'm any good, she can pass my. And so it might be that in terms of my business, and I'm a divorce and relationship coach, but it might be that it moves and grows over time, and I do different elements of coaching. I'm not sure yet, but that's that's what I'm doing at the moment.
Okay. So how far along the track of setting your business up are you? Is your website sorted, or
I'm Jessica Roy Coaching. I have also recently published my first article about Valentine's Day, and in the local press, about people who are struggling after separation and divorce, and thinking about Valentine's Day, and there's some tips on there. So I have been seeing some free clients to practice I've done all the theory, so I had some free clients to kind of practice my skills and put it into practice. But I've also got my first paying clients, which is really fantastic. And that's going to take time to build, and it's going to take time to network and grow. So in the meantime, like I just said, I'm doing a little bit of supply to keep. I'm a single mom, and I'm completely financially responsible for my children. So I had to look at my so I hope that helps anyone who's thinking, I don't know if I can do this. If I can do it, and I had to look at my finances, and I planned for 6 months. I've planned for 6 months, and I have to make it work, and I will make it work, because I have to. But what I am not going to do at the end of that 6 months is go back to teaching. So I'm also seeing a career coach who happens to be a bit of a friend as well. And he's been helping me do my CV. He's been helping me with LinkedIn. He's been helping me with all the different things that I can do, so that at the end of the 6 months, if my coaching business has not quite got off the ground enough as that I want it to be, that we've got things in place so that I don't have to go back to teaching, because I'm not going to do that. So the other thing I'm doing is I've got my fingers in a few pies, and I'm going to see what comes, because I'm working, I got a job with, and it's a freelance job with the company who do the speed awareness courses, the drink drivers courses, and I'm going to be facilitating and leading those courses in the classroom and online as well. So a little bit of teaching-y stuff, but it pays more than supply, so I might exchange some of my supply for that as well. I'll see.
Yeah, I'll come back to that in a minute, but I'd like to talk a bit more about your coaching qualification. Presumably there was a cost implication with that. You had to pay to do it.
Yeah.
So that's something people have to consider. It's not just having money in the bank to live on, but also funding any retraining that they might need to do. So do you mind sharing with us sort of the finance behind that, how much that cost?
Yeah, of course. So the coaching and mentoring that I did early on, I think that was about £150. It wasn't too bad. The large proportion of getting this proper accreditation for this divorce is been closer to £2,000 actually. That's why I would say look around and be sure about what you want to do, and the way that you want to go, because absolutely there are implications. Also, my career coach is costing money, but he's doing it half price because it's on mates rates for me. But generally, I think a career coach might cost around about £1,000. Having said that, I had a wonderful conversation with a supply lady yesterday who said she was getting free career coaching through the government somehow. So I will try and find out more about that from her as well. But she was getting, I don't know if she said weekly or monthly career coaching through the government, and she was giving me some great tips. So that might be something to look into as well.
Yeah, we'll put all the links and details about all this kind of thing in the notes under the video. And you said it was level 5 coaching. So how do the levels work? Do you not have to work your way up through the levels to get to level 5, or it's just that gives you the expertise that you think you want? Or
I think it is probably when you put on your CV, there's probably, I'd had a look at a few job specs and things like that, and seeing what kind of levels people were looking for, and thinking that I know I needed to start at a certain level. So I think it's just the probably the cost and the time you put into the training is to do with the level of it. Yeah,
okay. And how did you find the information that you needed about, I mean, obviously Google, but what are the useful websites for finding out this stuff?
So job-wise, when I was looking for jobs, Indeed I found was really, really helpful. But I do just search, I sort of go on a hopping kind of, I also looking at companies that you identify with actually. So if there are certain companies that you think, I really like what they do, it's often worth just going and looking on just to see what they have available as well. In terms of the qualifications that I've got, again, it came from me and the types of things I wanted to do. So particularly when I was working with a career coach, we did quite a bit of work on the things that I enjoyed about my roles and the things that I didn't enjoy about my roles. And what came out quite heavily for me was that I love working with people. I really enjoy kind of coaching and mentoring, bringing people on. That was a really lovely part of my role. I really like variety. I get bored really easily, and communication as well. So sort of bearing those things in mind, that helped me kind of look for the things that I wanted to go forwards with. So I mean, I'll say now, I haven't got at the moment like a particular end goal for this time next year. Mine's more of I think my process of coming out was I needed to get out of teaching first in order to kind of see what's out there and clear my mind of some of the negative things that you tell yourself or you get told as well. And one thing that's happened is I've just become so much more positive and open and having conversations with people and hearing more and see, you just become more open and you become more open to possibility. And I never felt like that when I was in teaching. I felt quite sort of hemmed in by everything. So the one thing I would say about qualifications, everything like that, almost for me, I don't look at it as an end goal now. What I'm doing now is great, and I will absolutely work towards all those things. But I'm not sure what I'll be doing in a few years. I'm quite open to that. If I'm doing something completely different, that's fine, but it won't be teaching.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you start teaching, you do think, or a lot of people, certainly when we started, thought it was going to be your career until retirement. So it's quite a big leap, isn't it, to realise that actually, no, it's not. But once you've got out, whatever you start doing, you realise that, yeah, like you say, that's not the end of the story. The story's still being written, and who knows what the end will be and how far you'll have travelled by the time, and I mean, what I'm doing now, I don't intend to retire as early as I can.
Yeah.
Like in teaching, you're like, oh, can I afford to take my pension at 55? Oh, maybe I'll push it to 56 or 57. I'm thinking, no, I'll just keep working. If I'm still working when I'm 70, I can be. Because if you enjoy what you're doing and you don't have all of those pressures and getting burnt out and being made ill, then you can do, can't you? And things lead on. You meet people when you're doing business networking, you meet people and they suggest things that give you ideas that you never thought you'd have and spark your imagination and your innovation. So would you say you'd come across any barriers so far on the journey that you've been on?
I think the difficulty for me was finance, and I know that can hold people in a place. Obviously, when I came away from my headship, I was on a really great wage, and I had to come down immediately to do those sort of termly contracts. And even now, supply is terrible money. It really is. All this kind of, we need people to do supply. Well, maybe you should pay them a little bit
In the
more.
national supply effort, I'm seeing on LinkedIn.
It's shocking.
Yeah.
But so finance, I think that can probably be for a lot of people. So it was for me. So I really had to consider my bottom line, what I could survive on. But what I would say about that is it's scary, but what you get back from your mental health and your positivity, in my experience, has just been, I no longer feel worried because I know that I'm in such a much better place now to do whatever I'm going to do. I think you lose confidence, and I know a lot of teachers lose it, so they often stay where they are as well, because and I have this with a member of my family at the moment. She's a teacher. She knows she really wants to come out, but she's stuck because it's that worry about as well, what can I do? I don't know what I can do for a similar money. And I would say, rather than maybe have a 1-year plan, you might be better thinking about it over about 5 years, because I know whatever I was going to do, I'd probably have to drop down, but hopefully I'd be able to build back up for about 5 years. And if you can maybe think of it a little bit like that, then, oh my goodness, the benefits you get to your mental health and positivity and able to go forward and try new things is just immense.
Yeah, the balance between that and finding out that actually you can live on quite a chunk less money than you always thought you wanted or needed. Definitely. What would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned along the way since you decided to get out?
Be true to yourself. I see, this is as a senior leader and as a colleague. I've had wonderful leaders. I've had wonderful head teachers that I've worked for. I've had wonderful colleagues. I've also had some really poor ones. And it's sometimes easy, particularly as a teacher, to get drawn into the negativity. It can be easy to get dragged down. And one of my favorite phrases was, move towards the radiators and stay away from the drains, because you really have to find those people who give you energy and build you up. And if you're not getting that from your work, that's so many hours of your day and your life. Just consider whether it's worth it, but also stay true to yourself, because I think there were times where people looked at me and thought, oh, she's too nice, or she's too this to do this. But who doesn't want nice people in education? Yeah. And I think just be true to yourself, because people will see through you, and you can be that, and you don't have to try and be anybody that somebody thinks you should be.
I was going to go back to the speed awareness thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because if people don't want to do supply, but just want something to keep a bit of money coming in. So how did you find that? How did you know that was a thing? Because I always thought the police ran those.
Indeed. Just advertising, and I was looking for, again, I knew I wanted part-time, because I'm trying to build this divorce and relationship coaching business. So my search parameters, I put in part-time. It was just a thing that came up, and I kind of looked into it, and yes, they wanted trainers online and in the classroom. I'm pretty sure they still do, so and it is a freelance thing, so you don't get paid for the training. But and once you do it, you get paid for the courses that you do, and actually, because it's part-time, you can only do, I think, up to like 14 days a month, but you could do, let's say, 2 or 3 courses in one day. And as I say, the money is better than supply. So it's just, again, I don't know if I'll get bored, because it's the same thing again and again. But again, I'm open to seeing what it is. And actually what they said to me was, because of my past roles and because of my coaching and mentoring that I did get, I'm sort of available to do different types of courses as well to other people as well. So that was like, oh great, that's been useful. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So is there anything else that you would like to say that you think would be useful to anybody considering a route out of teaching?
Just to be brave and use your support network, really. Just use people around you who will support you and who know you and who know when you're happy and when you're not happy. And so when you come out of it and they start seeing you being happy again, that's really nice for them and you to kind of share together. So yeah, absolutely use that. There's Facebook groups, there's people around, there's lots of things that you can look at to help you if you need information, and just there is stuff out there and there's people out there to help you, so just use what you can.
Yeah, because I think the main thing that a lot of people need to realize is that as a teacher who wants to leave teaching, you're not alone, but as a teacher who actually will successfully leave teaching, you're not alone. I mean, you will have done and will do, and I have and will do, met loads of ex-teachers who are thriving in alternative employment, self-employment. You're not stuck, really, are you?
Yeah, and just to add, actually, it's all very positive, but there is a little bit of a grieving process to go through. It is a bit like, because we all loved probably at one point the job and wanted it to be this thing that it maybe didn't turn out to be. that's really natural. There is it's a bit of a, you know, you'll go through that cycle of
Yeah.
grieving, and that's really natural. So, you know, don't feel any less that you feel dreadful that it's happening, because you may feel dreadful that it's happening, and that's really natural. But it's about coming out the other side, and you know, it will help you, and it will help your positive mental health as well, I think, if that's what you want. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so thank you very much, Jessica. That's been
Yeah,
really
thank you. It's
helpful,
been
I hope.
lovely.
So yeah, so that was
Okay.
Jessica Roy telling us about her route out of teaching.